Hi, I wasn't planning to make 3 videos during week 3, but it's just sort of turning out this way. As I go through the bar exam process, or the studying process, I learn more and more about what was working for me, what is working for me now that wasn't working for me then, back and forth. The biggest thing right now, and probably the biggest thing I really want to share, is that it's really vital, I think, to find the place that works best for you in studying. A lot of people out there have the advice of, put yourself in a testing environment as often as possible whenever you're doing any practice exam, on and on and on. While I agree with that to an extent, I don't agree with it doing it every single time. Partly because I've been through this twice before. Your adrenaline, your your very being is just in a very different space on the day of the exam than you can ever replicate on your own in some other environment. There's nothing that really compares to being in the merchandise mart with 1,000 other people and all of us are freaking out all at the same time. That alone, that sort of combination of everyone's individual nervous energies, is something that you're not going to be able to replicate on your own. Nor are you really going to be able to anticipate in your own stress and worry and whatever else how you are going to react to them. And when it's very different when you are taking a test and you get to look at the answers afterward than when you're taking your test and you're not going to see what the answers are until at least 3 months later. So while I do advocate getting out of your comfort zone every now and then and putting yourself into a testing environment, I don't recommend that all the time. And for me right now, that is sort of the key. Obviously you can tell that I'm back in my office and I'm not at the law school. I'm not with a pale white background. And I'm noticing, certain things help me when I'm at home. Having the comforts of home, do help me. Because if I'm having a really bad day studying, then I'm much more apt to take a meaningful break. When I'm at the law school and I'm studying in a study room, either I don't feel like I can take a break, so I will go on and on and on, and I will be sitting there for 5 hours straight, focusing on this one lecture or focusing on this, doing as many essays as I can, which that kind of focus isn't bad, but having that focus without stepping away long enough to really evaluate what's working for you and what's not is not going to be positive, and it's not going to be helpful. So I really do advocate finding the best space you can to study. And for me, I'm going to be limiting, I think from here on out, how often I'm going to be studying at the law school. I think 1 day a week is good as sort of again, getting me out of my comfort zone, helping me hyper focus a little bit. And I think, those days are definitely going to be rare compared to when I'm at home or when I decide to go to a coffee shop or something like that. And I think changing up my environment and figuring out what environments work for what kind of studying will be great for me and very, very helpful for me. So one of the other things that's been happening this week is I actually got a ton of feedback on my essays. And all of it's been really positive. I mean, there's some things here and there. I'm finding that I need to make some better issue statements, something that I think does go by the wayside as I'm trying to figure out what kind of law to apply to the situation. But I'm getting some really fantastic feedback, and I think one of the biggest things I can recommend to people is if your bar program or if your school or whatnot doesn't offer the ability to provide feedback on things like essays, and at least get feedback once a week and just kind of check in. Are you improving? Are you not? Then I would find someone with at least a little bit of legal knowledge who will read through your essay, read through the question, and tell you whether you even answered the question. that you can give them a copy of the model answer and have them evaluate how well you're coming across. Now, of course, the more experience that they have with the bar exam and the very particular requirements of the bar exam would be great, because, for example, if I have someone who works in a law office read my PT, my performance test, they tell me, oh my God, that's great. This is exactly what we would expect in our firm. The problem is that the way that I write it was actually not going to be helpful for me on the bar exam, because there are some things, intuitive legal knowledge, that I sort of skip from point A to point D, and I don't put all the little parts in between, because I assume that the person I'm working for, who might be reading that legal memo, already knows some of these things. So that they will have already read some of those things. So in essence, sometimes I think what I'm working on right now is I'm having to change how I write, and write specifically for the bar examiners, make it easy for them to find my issues, make it easy for them to find my rules, make it easy for them to find my application. And as always, one of the biggest pieces of advice is always write a conclusion. It doesn't matter if your conclusion is correct or not sometimes. There's some things that are going to be correct, and there's some things that are really, up in the air, but decide something. And, you went through all this, application, go ahead and call it, because that is something I'm finding will get you plenty of points, is just putting a conclusion. So I'm having to tweak how I normally write and how I would normally write in a legal environment to adapt it and really kind of show all my work, and take the person along hand by hand through my entire analysis so that they don't miss a beat. Now, the problem with that is that it does take time, and it takes up valuable time. So I'm having to learn some shortcuts in terms of how I read the case file on the performance test, how I read the law library. The law library's been tripping me up quite a bit, because I'm used to the very thorough analysis that I've had to do in the past. And I'm finding that is all coming back to me a lot quicker than I thought it would, which is good. But if you can at all do this, if you can at all find someone in your life to be able to do this, have someone read your performance test, have someone read your essays, not every single essay, because you do want to be able to evaluate it yourself, but having that feedback is so incredibly helpful. So the other thing that's been going on this week too is I've been getting incredibly overwhelmed. I haven't been spending any time meditating, and meditation is that's one of the big differences between last time and this time, is that I have a much more definable spiritual practice in my life. So I haven't been spending any time doing that, and I haven't been taking the time to do that because I feel so overwhelmed by the amount of work required under Barbary, all the assignments under Barbary and all the assignments with the DU program. So like today, I have 2 essays that I have to turn in, one for DU and one for Barbary, if I want to have them graded and evaluated, which I really do. Again, going back to the last point. So the question is, do I power through that, or do I take the half hour it's going to take for me to really sort of let go of all the anxiety and frustration and everything else that's in my system? And the anxiety and frustration and insecurity are all coming out in very, very odd ways. One of them is triggering all of my normal body image self-consciousness stuff. Another is suddenly I'm afraid that I'm not going to see my kid again when he goes outside to ride his bike or something stupid like that. So the anxiety is sort of seeping out in the other cracks in my life. And there's no way that you can ever approach the bar exam and be sort of in a perfect place for it. I'm in a much better place now than I ever have been, which is great. but it does mean that the stress is going to sort of squeeze out in all these other areas of your life that are vulnerable and difficult. And part of it is just the game, but I think, again, having something, whether it's breathing exercises, whether it's yoga, whether it's exercise, whether it's whatever, something that's going to help release the valve of all of that stress so that it's not overexposing and overtaxing these more vulnerable areas of your life, your relationships, or your family, or your personal insecurities, or your anything that might sort of sneak up on you and hurt you and sabotage you. The stress can definitely put additional pressure on those areas if they're already not necessarily in a great spot. So that's something that I'm finding as well. So I have to spend a lot more time, and my goal is to spend a lot more time just centering and keeping myself grounded in who I am and why I'm doing this. That being said, it is so difficult to make that decision, and it's so difficult to give up studying time, valuable studying time, in order to commune with nature, or whatever it is that you need to do for you. It's really hard to make that decision, and I think, especially if you're watching this, to support someone you love who's going through the bar exam, encouraging them and making that a safe decision for them to make, whatever is going to help them sort of release a little bit, because this is a lot of pressure. And as we sit through lectures, we find out, oh my God, I don't know this, I don't know this, I don't know this. So we start to panic, and we internalize that panic, and it can affect our performance. It can affect all sorts of things. So managing stress, managing anxiety, putting yourself in the right environment, and just taking time to center, and getting good feedback. I have been all over the map today and with this video, but I really hope some of those suggestions are helpful, and some of those suggestions can let you know where I am right now at the end of week 3. So I have a mock test coming up on Saturday, and then Saturday afternoon I am taking the afternoon off and taking my kid to the Renaissance Festival, where he is going to be adorably cute. So that is my grounding. Thanks, and you'll probably hear from me before the weekend's out. Take care.